Now, apparently the journalist, the political commentator, Ross Clark, is saying that the economy is growing and therefore things aren't that bad. He says the stock market's recovering, inflation has fallen sharply, stores are reporting growth, and there's little sign of Britain getting into a double-dip recession. Let's remind ourselves, while he's banging on about that, here in Northern Ireland, house prices have fallen by just under another 10%. Ross Clark's with us this morning. Morning to you, Ross.
Good morning.
Morning. And the economist and wealth manager, Jonathan Davis. Morning to you, Jonathan.
Hi, Stephen.
Good morning. Ross, where are you getting this from?
Well, is this a natural part of human psychology and the whole reason we have an economic cycle? That when things are going well, we tend to be too optimistic, and then when things are going badly, we tend to be too pessimistic. And what happens, and it's happened numerous times through every recession, just at the point of sort of maximum talk of Armageddon and so on, things start imperceptibly to get better. And when, the last people who are going to panic have sold their shares and so on, then there's nobody left to sell. Things start to get better. When people sitting on a pile of cash suddenly start buying things again, and, the economy picks up, we get out of recession. Now, I appreciate Jonathan Davis, who's on the line as well. He's a serial pessimist, but and did predict the disaster in 2007. But most of those people who are now predicting continued financial crisis for reaching into the long distance, go back to 2007, and they didn't foresee the crash because they were still
Jonathan,
optimistic.
Jonathan, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm the first to say that human behaviour and psychology is very important in the stock market, but to deny the reality of the global and the EU and the UK economy is cloud cuckoo land. In 2008, we had the biggest economic and financial collapse in history. As was just said, people like me forecasted it was going to happen, whereas 99% said it wasn't going to happen. Then companies were going bust. Now, Mr. Clark, countries are going bust. Greece is about to go bust beyond belief. The Republic of Ireland has already gone bust. Portugal, Italy, the UK has 9.5 times the size of our economy as debt. To suggest that because the stock market has risen in the last 6 weeks and therefore we should think that everything's going to be okay is a stuff of nonsense.
Ross?
Yes, of course that there is a crisis in the euro. Nobody's denying that. But Greece is effectively bust. Yes, Republic of Ireland is effectively bust. But ultimately, one of the reasons we have such a crisis in the eurozone is because the ECB is not taking the same route as Britain has done, which is to print money, try and escape themselves out of the debt that way. And but eventually, it'll be morally corrupt to do it, I agree. But eventually, I suspect the ECB will resort to the same line as we've done and the Americans did, which is to print money, print their way out of debt. We'll have, of course, a completely different set of problems further down the line. We will have bad inflation.
So what do you predict, Jonathan Davis, for this year?
Yeah, well, he's talking about the stock market having risen in the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Actually, I think we're seeing the high point in the stock market for this year. I think Greece and all their negotiations right now are going to be resolved in the next week or two, and that will be the impetus to really sell off the stock market. In terms of unemployment, I'm afraid to say I can only see it rising. We saw economic growth in the UK fall 0.2% in last quarter. It was only announced this morning. The International Monetary Fund said yesterday that the UK growth, if you can call it that, has been downgraded from 1.6% to 0.6%. In other words, we're effectively going backwards because you need 2% growth to stand still. There's going to be higher home repossessions. There's going to be continuing falling house prices. The stock market's going to fall. To suggest that this is the time to buy into the stock market. I've never heard such nonsense in my life, except from people who are trying to sell shares, or in other words, who work in the city. Well, I'm a wealth manager, and I'm actually getting out of the stock market at these levels because it's a very good time to get out.
OK, Jonathan, thank you. Ross, thank you. Morning to you both.